Section 56 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Elizabeth Buchanan. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1, by Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bencraft Joly. Chapter 24, Part 1. The drunken Qing Kang makes light of lucre, and shows a preference for generosity. The foolish girl mislays her handkerchief, and arouses mutual thoughts. But to return to our narrative. Lin Daiyu's sentimental reflections were the while reeling and ravelling in an intricate maze, when unexpectedly some one from behind gave her a tap, saying, "What are you up to all alone here?" Which took Lin Daiyu so much by surprise that she gave a start, and turning her head round to look, and noticing it was Hsiang Ling and no one else, "You stupid girl," Lin Daiyu replied, "you've given me such a fright! But where do you come from at this time?" Hsiang Ling giggled and smirked. "I've come," she added, "in search of our young lady, but I can't find her anywhere. But your Su Chuan is also looking after you, and she says that lady Secunda has sent a present to you of some tea, but you had better go home and sit down." As she spoke, she took Tai yü by the hand, and they came along back to the Hsiao Hsiang Huan, where lady Feng had indeed sent her 2 small caddies of a new season tea, of superior quality. But Lin Daiyu sat down, in company with Hsiang Ling, and began to converse on the merits of this tapestry, and the fineness of that embroidery; and after they had also had a game at chess, and read a few sentences out of a book, Hsiang Ling took her departure. But we need not speak of either of them, but return now to Pao yü. Having been found and brought back home by Hsi Jen, he discovered Yuan Yang reclining on the bed, in the act of examining Hsi Jen's needlework; but when she perceived Pao yü arrive, she forthwith remarked: "Where have you been? Her venerable ladyship is waiting for you, to tell you to go over and pay your obeisance to our senior master; and don't you still make haste to go and change your clothes and be off." Hsi Jen at once walked into the room to fetch his clothes, and Pao yü sat on the edge of the bed and pushed his shoes off with his toes, and while waiting for his boots to put them on, he turned round, and perceiving that Yuan Yang, who was clad in a light red silk jacket and a green satin waistcoat, and girdled with a white crepe sash, had her face turned the other way, and her head lowered giving her attention to the criticism of the needlework, while round her neck she wore a collar with embroidery, Pao yü readily pressed his face against the nape of her neck, and as he sniffed the perfume about it, he did not stay his hand from stroking her neck, which in whiteness and smoothness was not below that of Hsi Jen; and as he approached her, "My dear girl," he said smiling and with a drivelling face, "do let me lick the cosmetic off your mouth," clinging to her person, as he uttered these words, like twisted sweetmeat. "Hsi Jen," cried Yuan Yang at once, "come out and see! You've been with him a whole lifetime, and don't you give him any advice, but let him still behave in this fashion?" Whereupon Hsi Jen walked out clasping the clothes, and turning to Pao yü, she observed: "I advise you in this way, and it's no good; I advise you in that way, and you don't mend; and what do you mean to do after all? But if you again behave like this, it will then in fact be impossible for me to live any longer in this place." As she tendered these words of counsel, she urged him to put his clothes on, and after he had changed, he betook himself, along with Yuan Yang, to the front part of the mansion, and bade good bye to dowager lady Chia; after which he went inside, where the attendants and horses were all in readiness. But when he was about to mount his steed, he perceived Chia Lien back from his visit and in the act of dismounting; and as the two of them stood face to face, and mutually exchanged some inquiries, they saw some one come round from the side and say: "My respects to you, uncle Pao yü." When Pao yü came to look at him, he noticed that this person had an oblong face, that his body was tall and lanky, that his age was only 18 or 19, and that he possessed in real truth an air of refinement and elegance; but though his features were, after all, exceedingly familiar, he could not recall to mind to what branch of the family he belonged, and what his name was. "What are you staring vacantly for?" Chia Lien inquired laughing. "Don't you even recognise him? He is Yün Erh, the son of our fifth sister-in-law, who lives in the back court." "Of course," Pao yü assented complacently. "How is it that I had forgotten just now?" And having gone on to ask how his mother was, and what work he had to do at present, "I've come in search of uncle Secundus, to tell him something," Chia Yün replied, as he pointed at Chia Lien. "You've really improved vastly from what you were before," added Pao yü smiling. "You verily look just as if you were my son." "How very barefaced!" Chia Lien exclaimed as he burst out laughing. "Here's a person 4 or 5 years your senior to be made your son!" "How far are you in your teens this year?" Pao yü inquired with a smile. 18, Chia Yün rejoined. This Chia Yün was, in real deed, sharp and quick-witted, and when he heard Pao yü remark that he looked like his son, he readily gave a sarcastic smile and observed: "The proverb is true which says: 'The grandfather is rocked in the cradle, while the grandson leans on a staff.' But though old enough in years, I'm nevertheless like a mountain, which in spite of its height cannot screen the sun from view. Besides, since my father's death, I've had no one to look after me; and were you, uncle Pao, not to disdain your doltish nephew, and to acknowledge me as your son, it would be your nephew's good fortune." "Have you heard what he said?" Chia Lien interposed cynically. "But to acknowledge him as a son is no easy question to settle." And with these words he walked in; whereupon Pao yü smilingly said: "To morrow, when you have nothing to do, just come and look me up, but don't go and play any devilish pranks with them. I've just now no leisure, so come to morrow into the library, where I'll have a chat with you for a whole day, and take you into the garden for some fun." With this remark still on his lips, he laid hold of the saddle and mounted his horse, and followed by the whole bevy of pages, he crossed over to Chia She's on this side; where, having discovered that Chia She had nothing more the matter with him than a chill, which he had suddenly contracted, he commenced by delivering dowager lady Chia's message, and next paid his own obeisance. Chia She, at first, stood up and made suitable answer to her venerable ladyship's inquiry, and then calling a servant: "Take the gentleman," he said, "into my lady's apartment to sit down." Pao yü withdrew out of the room, and came by the back to the upper apartment; and as soon as madame Hsing caught sight of him, she, before everything else, rose to her feet and asked after old lady Chia's health; after which, Pao yü made his own salutation, and madame Hsing drew him on to the stove couch, where she induced him to take a seat, and eventually inquired after the other inmates, and also gave orders to serve the tea. But scarcely had they had tea, before they perceived Chia Tsung come in to pay his respects to Pao yü. "Where could one find such a living monkey as this?" madame Hsing remarked. "Is that nurse of yours dead and gone, that she doesn't even keep you clean and tidy, and that she lets you go about with those eyebrows of yours so black, and that mouth so filthy? You scarcely look like the child of a great family of scholars." While she spoke, she perceived both Chia Huan and Chia Lan, one of whom was a young uncle and the other his nephew, also advance and present their compliments; and madame Hsing bade the two of them sit down on the chairs. But when Chia Huan noticed that Pao yü sat on the same rug with madame Hsing, and that her ladyship was further caressing and petting him in every possible manner, he soon felt so very unhappy at heart that, after sitting for a short time, he forthwith made a sign to Chia Lan that he would like to go; and as Chia Lan could not but humour him, they both got up together to take their leave. But when Pao yü perceived them rise, he too felt a wish to go back along with them; but madame Hsing remarked smilingly: "You had better sit a while, as I've something more to tell you," so that Pao yü had no alternative but to stay. "When you get back," madame Hsing added, addressing the other two, "present, each one of you, my regards to your respective mothers. The young ladies, your cousins, are all here making such a row that my head is dazed, so that I won't to day keep you to have your repast here." To which Chia Huan and Chia Lan assented and quickly walked out. "If it be really the case that all my cousins have come over," Pao yü ventured with a smirk, "how is it that I don't see them?" "After sitting here for a while," madame Hsing explained, "they all went at the back, but in what rooms they have gone, I don't know." "My senior aunt, you said you had something to tell me," Pao yü observed. "What's it, I wonder?" "What can there possibly be to tell you?" madame Hsing laughed. "It was simply to make you wait and have your repast with the young ladies, and then go. But there's also a fine plaything that I'll give you to take back to amuse yourself with." These two, the aunt and her nephew, were going on with their colloquy, when, much to their surprise, it was time for dinner, and the young ladies were all invited to come. The tables and chairs were put in their places, and the cups and plates were arranged in proper order; and after the mother, her daughter and the cousins had finished their meal, Pao yü bade good bye to Chia She and returned home in company with all the young ladies; and when they had said good night, dowager lady Chia, madame Wang and the others, they each went back into their rooms and retired to rest, where we shall leave them without any further comment, and speak of Chia Yuen's visit to the mansion. As soon as he saw Chia Lien, he inquired what business it was that had turned up, and Chia Lien consequently explained: "The other day something did actually present itself, but as it happened that your aunt had again and again entreated me, I gave it to Chia Ch'in, as she promised me that there would be by and by, in the garden, several other spots, where flowers and trees would be planted, and that when this job did occur, she would for a certainty give it to you and finish." Chia Yün, upon hearing these words, suggested after a short pause: "If that be so, there's nothing for me to do than wait; but, uncle, you too mustn't make any allusion beforehand, in the presence of aunt, to my having come to day to make any inquiries, for there will really be ample time to speak to her when the job turns up." "Why should I allude to it?" Chia Lien rejoined. "Have I forsooth got all this leisure to talk of irrelevant matters? But to morrow, besides, I've got to go as far as Hsing Yi for a turn, and it's absolutely necessary that I should hurriedly come back the very same day. So off with you now, and go and wait; and the day after to morrow, after the watch has been set, come and ask for news. But mind, at any earlier hour, I shan't have any leisure." With these words, he hastily went at the back to change his clothes; and from the time Chia Yün put his foot out of the door at the Jung Kuo mansion, he was, the whole way homeward, plunged in deep thought; but having bethought himself of some expedient, he straightway wended his steps towards the house of his maternal uncle, Pu Shih jen. This Pu Shih jen, it must be explained, kept at the present date a shop for the sale of spices. He had just returned home from his shop, and as soon as he noticed Chia Yün, he inquired of him what business brought him there. "There's something," Chia Yün replied, "in which I would like to crave your assistance, uncle. I'm in need of some baroose camphor and musk, so please, uncle, give me on credit 4 ounces of each kind, and on the festival of the 8th moon, I'll bring you the amount in full." Pu Shih jen gave a sardonic smile. "Don't," he said, "again allude to any such thing as selling on tick. Some time back, a partner in our establishment got several ounces of goods for his relatives on credit, and up to this date the bill hasn't as yet been settled; the result being that we've all had to make the amount good, so that we've entered into an agreement that we should no more allow any one to obtain on tick anything on behalf of either relative or friend, and that whoever acted contrary to this resolution should at once be fined 20 taels, with which to stand a treat. Besides, the stock of these articles is now short, and were you also to come with ready money to this our mean shop to buy any, we wouldn't even have as much to give you. The best way therefore is for you to go elsewhere. This is one side of the question. For the other, you can't have anything above board in view, and were you to obtain what you want as a loan, you would again go and play the giddy dog. But you'll simply say that on every occasion your uncle sees you, he avails himself of it to find fault with you, but a young fellow like you doesn't know what's good and what is bad; and you should besides make up your mind to earn a few cash, wherewith to clothe and feed yourself, so that when I see you, I too may rejoice." "What you, uncle, say," Chia Yün rejoined smiling, "is perfectly right; the only thing is that at the time of my father's death, I was likewise so young in years that I couldn't understand anything; but later on, I heard my mother explain how that for everything, it was lucky that you, after all, my uncles, went over to our house and devised the ways and means, and managed the funeral; and is it likely you, uncle, aren't aware of these things? Besides, have I forsooth had a single acre of land, or a couple of houses, the value of which I've run through as soon as it came into my hands? An ingenious wife cannot make boiled rice without raw rice; and what will you have me do? It's your good fortune, however, that you've got to deal with one such as I am; for had it been any one else barefaced and shameless, he would have come twice every 3 days to worry you, uncle, by asking for 2 pints of rice and 2 of beans, and you then, uncle, would have had no help for it." "My dear child," Pu Shih jen exclaimed, "had I anything that I could call my own, your uncle as I am, wouldn't I feel bound to do something for you? I've day after day mentioned to your aunt that the misfortune was that you had no resources; but should you ever succeed in making up your mind, you should go into that mighty household of yours, and when the gentlemen aren't looking, forthwith pocket your pride and hobnob with those managers, or possibly with the butlers, as you may, even through them, be able to get some charge or other. The other day, when I was out of town, I came across that old Quartus of the third branch of the family, astride of a tall donkey and at the head of 4 or 5 carriages, in which were about 40 to 50 bonzes and Taoist priests on their way to the family fane; and that man can't lack brains, for such a charge to have fallen to his share." Chia Yün, upon hearing these words, indulged in a long and revolting rigmarole, and then got up to take his leave. "What are you in such a hurry for?" Pu Shih jen remarked. "Have your meal and then go." But this remark was scarcely ended when they heard his wife say: "Are you again in the clouds? When I heard there was no rice, I bought half a catty of dry rice paste and brought it here for you to eat; and do you pray now still put on the airs of a well to do, and keep your nephew to feel the pangs of hunger? Well then, buy half a catty more, and add to what there is, that's all," Pu Shih jen continued; whereupon her mother explained to her daughter, Yin Chieh: "Go over to Mrs. Wang's opposite, and ask her if she has any cash to lend us 20 or 30 of them, and to morrow when they're brought over, we'll repay her." Section 57.